How do we read more books? So I think this is one question that we all ask on our reading journey, or whether you're getting started on your reading journey. And it is an important question, but is it the most important one you can ask? So most of the times when people pick up books, they have a goal of, I want to read 100 books a year, or I want to read 10 books a year, or this month I want to read 5 books a year. But is that really how we should be measuring it? And what if you read it and don't remember anything? I mean, then you're pointless. You read for nothing. You wasted your time. Unless you just enjoy reading, but why pick up a book and not remember it? And how can we read and understand things better when we do read things? So this is a question that I've been asking myself recently and doing a lot of research on. And I've been trying and working out different things over the course of the last couple of months. And I found a couple of things that have truly helped me understand more and read more. So today I'm going to be going over some of the tips and tricks that I found the most practical and that brought the most value and really did help me increase my reading and also retain more. The first thing you need to think about when you either pick up a book or this is your first time starting your reading journey is to think of the book as a conversation. And Tolstoy has an amazing quote on this. He says, "I cannot understand how people can live without communicating with the wisest people who ever lived on earth." And he was mainly talking about how through books we can have communication with people who've been long dead before us, people from thousands of years ago, and we can simply pick up a book and have a conversation with them, talk with the work. So whatever material you pick up, you need to argue with it, you need to critique it, you need to disagree, you need to agree. You really need to dig your hands in deep, ask it questions, answer its questions. You really need to work with the book. Treat it like a discussion. Discuss with it, think about it, let the book consume you. Because this is where you're going to get the most value out of it, and you also will learn a lot more when you really just dig your hands into it and really speak with it. So the next time you sit down and read a book, be sure to have a conversation with it. The second thing you need to keep in mind is reading is a muscle. Just like any exercise, you have to slowly build it over time, okay? I've seen a lot of my friends that I've tried to get into reading, they'll pick up a book, they'll text me and be like, "Hey, I read for an hour." And they'll do that the second day, and the third day, they're already bogged down and burned out. Why is that? Because they haven't built the reading muscle. And this was the method I used to start reading a lot, and this is the method I believe that will help you the most. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have covered this method, so let's get into it. So if you're starting your reading journey or you're trying to get back into reading, like you stopped a couple months ago, and you try to get back into it, but it just seems frustrating and you're bogged down, I recommend starting with 10 minutes or 10 pages. Either one works, depends on how thick the book is or how long the book is, but do this every single day. And while you're doing this, log your progress, log your progress down. Now, you can use whatever you want. You can use your phone, an app, but I do recommend using a physical notebook. That's just me personally, but I do recommend it. And whenever you do log it down, write down the title, write down the date, write down what you did, your time increment or your page increment, and slowly build that catalog. Now, after you've done this for, let's say, a week or so, you can increase it ever so slightly, but not too little. Like, you increase it by a minute. I mean, you can do that. It's just going to take a little bit slower. I find 5 minutes or 5 pages is really the key. Now, this does depend on you as a person, because you may not want to jump from 10 pages to 5 pages. You may want to jump from 10 to 12. It's your habit. You build how you want. I'm just here to convey the information. But when you do this, just keep in mind that reading is a mental exercise. You have to condition your mind to reading. And the more conditioning you do, the better you'll get. And over time, and eventually you'll get to reading, you know, you'll get to reading an hour, hour and 30 minutes, 2 hours. I mean, it may take a couple months, but once you have truly ingrained the habit, you'll never be able to put a book down. Third one, and the most important one, is read every damn day. If you want to get really good at reading, you have to read every day. Now, I know sometimes we don't have time to read every day, and sometimes you feel like you lose a motivation, but especially if you've been reading for an hour, and then you take a week off and come back, it's going to be really, really slow. So I recommend at least read something every day. Now, if you are in a really dense book and you don't just want to read a little bit and stop in the middle of the chapter, I do recommend daily books. These have like a page a day you can read, and most of them are very information packed, like these two, the Daily Stoic and the Daily Laws. These are books you can read every day, one page, very simple. Some take 5 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes. Really short passages, but very important messages. So, as long as you're making progress, that will be the best thing possible. Think of books as investments. The more you invest, the more you grow. Number 4 is don't read stuff you do not like. I cannot emphasize this point enough. If a book is bad, put it down, quit it. It doesn't matter, you're wasting your time. If you find it boring, you're not going to be able to remember much of it. It's just going to bog you down and you're going to get tired of reading. So, one thing I took from Ryan Holiday was he said, you take whatever your age is and subtract it from 100 pages. If it hasn't interested you in those short amount of time, then drop it. I personally like to do at least 1 to 2 chapters, really get a feel for it, and see if it's good or not. Now, number 5 is retention. There's a lot of different things you can do to retain more information. The ones I'm going to cover are the ones that I have found the most useful. Most people, when they want to retain something, they highlight it and then they write it down word for word. I find that to just be time consuming and just kind of meh. What I mean by that is, I don't think it's the best way we can do things. Obviously, I believe in writing it down, but I think there's better methods. So here are some of the key foundations I've found that help me retain more information from what I was reading. The first one is after every chapter or concept. At the end of the chapter, I'll grab the book, I'll write below the chapter or grab a journal, and I'll write a summary of the chapter or concept. Not only that, I write it in my own words. Because for some reason, when you write it in your own words, you tend to remember it a little bit more. I don't know why that is, and I don't know why that works for me, but that may help you remember exactly what you're reading. So, to give an example of this using one of the books I read earlier in my life, it'd be The Psychology of Money. For chapter 7, I wrote a quick summary of the chapter here. You can see it's very quick, very easy, and makes it just a lot better, a lot easier to remember. I remember writing the summary. I don't remember why exactly that stuck, but there's a lot of other instances where writing just a quick and short summary, but also a precise summary, really helped me remember it. And I hope it helps you as well. Now, on to probably the most annoying tip for remembering or retaining books is going to be rereading. Now, I know. Rereading is a hassle. It's just like, ugh, I have to read this again? What? But rereading a book, it really solidifies it, and I hope you do. Because it feels like whenever you read it once, the first time you read a book, you're kind of just, it's new information, new writing style if this is the first time you've read an author, and it's just brand new, okay? And you get through it, and you have some idea of the concepts and some of the ideas in there, but once you read it a second time, it solidifies it. And I don't have the date off the top of my head, but I believe you can remember up to about 10% of your first read, and then your second read, I think you remember about 20%. Which, I mean, that's doubling it, obviously, but it's probably a little bit higher than that. But yeah. Now, whenever you reread a book, you're coming back to it from a different perspective. So you'll have new thoughts, new information. So, considering that rereading is probably the best way to retain information, what are some ways we can make it easier to reread and also make it just a little bit less of a hassle? One method that I found of rereading something that really helps is audiobooks. So if you really want to learn the concepts, the ideas in a book, if you read it and then listen to the audiobook, it just sticks a lot more, and it feels very refreshing. There's a different voice, there's different things, they talk about it differently, but it mainly helps because you don't have to sit there and read it. You can be driving, you can be doing everyday tasks and complete a reread of a book while virtually doing mindless tasks. So keep that in mind whenever you do want to reread something, or just give it a shot and read the book and then listen to it and see how it works for you. The final thing you can do to really retain information, make your reading experience much better, would be actions. So what I like to do is I usually take a lesson from a book, or I'll take a chapter, concept, idea, doesn't really matter what it is, and I will write it at the end of the chapter if there's space in the book, or I will take what I call an action journal and write down an action for me to take either that week or the day I read it, or just to keep it in mind and try to practice the things that are in the books. So basically you're going to take, so what this really looks like is, let's say, for me, I'll take the example of Benjamin Franklin's biography by Walter Isaacson. And I found a lot of lessons in this book, but the ones that I found the most practical and the ones I could really use in my everyday life and the ones I could improve on, I'll write it down in my action journal and just write down the steps, write down the idea, or create an action that you could do to really solidify this. Now, this works in both ways. As you know, when you do read a book, you are supposed to take the information and turn it into things that help you in your own life. And I find making actions out of chapters and writing down the concepts and lessons and making the actions, physically writing them down and consciously thinking to do them, is what helps me and you to better our lives and better our reading and actually remember what we're doing. Now, there is one way you can take this a step further, and it's that, let's say you took Psychology of Money and you wrote down the action at the end of the chapter, and to get to the next chapter you have to complete the action of the previous chapter. Now, that depends on the book, that depends on the things, that depends on the circumstances, but I am throwing that out there for you to use. And the final trick, tip, whatever you want to call it, is personalize. And there are so many things that you can do to make reading enjoyable and memorable and possibly leave a lasting impression on your kids or family members. For instance, I picked up one of my grandpa's books. He's now deceased, but in the book he had written where he had got it, the date he got it, and the bookshop he had got it from. And it just felt, it was like, wow, that's really cool. It's cool to see where he was at the time and where he got it, how much he bought it for. I mean, you don't have to have all that, but think about things you can do to personalize and really enjoy your reading experience. Do things like that. You know, I like to write down the dates and the time that I wrote down the summaries. That's one really useful thing that just adds that little touch. You can come back after years later and be like, wow, my thinking has evolved this much, and this is the day I was sitting there. It just makes it really, really interesting. So think about ways you can personalize your reading, whether you add the date you finished the book, the date you started the book, write what you think of the book before you even read it, and then after, and see how they changed your perceptions of the book. I mean, there's so many things you can do. So I would like you to think about different ways. Throw in the comments. In the comments, you can throw in some ideas, some tricks that you found that were very useful. And I'd like to see what your suggestions are. But that does conclude the video for today. It was meant to be quick, meant to be simple, give you some practical tips, give you some things that I've been trying over the last couple of months, and really throw it out there, and hopefully I helped you. Be sure to subscribe, because I'm going to be posting more videos, not necessarily focused on reading as much, but more philosophy, history, things of that sort. But I did want to share this, so I appreciate you watching, and see you in the next one.